Hi everyone, this is Vivian. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to show you 10 ways to practice calligraphy when you don't know what to write. Sometimes I find myself having the time to finally sit down and practice calligraphy and then realize I don't know what to write. What should I write? And then I find myself going onto social medias looking for quotes and words, and then time just went by. So in this video, I'm going to show you 10 ways to not fall into that trap. Now, these are not just 10 random things I put together. These are strategic ways to improve your calligraphy. So when I say 10 things, it's actually more like 10 types of things. You're probably gonna end up writing 100 things or more. And the first one is girl's name. So writing name is very useful and practical, especially now that the holidays coming up. So if you want to write greeting cards, you can write these. This is a very good practice. So what I usually do is just to go on Google and search for popular names, and the first one we're going to do here is girl's name. So if you ever wanted to practice flourish, this will be a good place to practice your flourish, because usually when you write names on cards is where you want it to be extra fancy. And then the second one is boy's name. So again, I go back to Google and search for popular boy's name, and just like practicing girl's name, writing boy's name is also a good way to utilize your fancy capital letter skills. So now moving on to number 3, which is the last name. So like number 1 and number 2, practicing last name is also very practical, especially if you want to do fancy envelope writing, or if you plan to write place cards for events. Practicing these last name will be very helpful. So what I do here is I search for popular or common last names and practice these, because then chances are if you ever end up writing last name for event, you will have these names on the list. And then number 4 is pangrams. So pangrams are a sentence that contains all 26 letters in the English alphabet. And the most common one you see is probably the quick fox jumps over the lazy dog. But then there are many more pangrams. So you can do a quick search of pangrams, and usually you will come up with a lot of examples. The reason for practicing pangram is you get to write all 26 letters, so you get to practice the one that's less frequent, such as the X or the Q, the Z. And these sentences sometimes sounds funny, but again, it's just a good way to practicing writing a whole sentence and with more unique words. Now for number 5, we're getting more technical here. So for number 5, we're going to practice lowercase combinations. By that I mean we'll be doing a combination of 2 letters. So we start with AA and then continue to AB, AC, AD, AE, AF, AG, blah blah blah. And then after that we will do B with BA, BB, BC, BD, BE, BF. So the idea is to write all possible combination in lowercase letters. So if you start writing this, then you have a really good bird's eye view of how your spacing is. If your spacing look all consistent throughout the whole A to Z. And then for number 6, we're going to do something a little different, which is you are using capital letter and then a lowercase. So you do a capital letter A and then a lowercase a, and then a capital letter A and then a lowercase b, and so on and so forth. So this is a good practice for trying different styles of capital letters. So you do a capital letter and then a pairing with a lowercase a and then all the way to Z. And then you would do the same with B and all the way from A to Z. So for number 7, we're going to write common words like the, and, for, are, but, her, was, ours, gets, has, he, she, whom, this kind of words. So these words, they come up so frequent in our everyday, so we might as well get really good at it. So when we next time write a whole sentence, chances are you have a bunch of these words, and you would have that muscle memory to just naturally write them out beautifully. Moving on to number 8, prefix. So prefixes are the couple letters in the beginning of words. So words starting with ANTI, such as anticipate, antique, antidote, or antifungal, I don't know. And then words like start with AUTO, like automatic, autograph, autopilot, autobiography. So you can write just the prefix, like the ANTI, AUTO, or if you want to practice a whole word, you can write words, 2 or 3 words for every prefix. So for like COM will be like complete, computer, competitions, combine. And then for CON will be like continue, consumer, confetti, conclude. And with contra will be contract, contrary, contradict, contractor. Words with DE will be like design, define, desire, defend. And then words with DIS such as discuss, display, discover, distance. Now with number 9, we're going to do the end of the word. So we're going to practice some suffix. So words like ending with ACE will be like legacy, delicacy, or privacy, accuracy, conspiracy. And then words with AL will be like local, total, final, royal. And then words with ANCE will be like chance, dance, guidance. So the idea here is to get your muscle memory are so used to writing these words, the motion for these words. So when you're writing any words, you already have maybe, the end of the word you're so familiar, or the beginning of the word you're so familiar, then you don't have to struggle so much every time you write a new word. So words ending with DOM will be like wisdom, kingdom, freedom, boredom. And with ER will be like giver, brother, farmer, winter, writer. And words with OR will be junior, senior, savior, narrator. And with ISM, with words like tourism, futurism, feminism, baptism. Or IST will be exit, twist, list, artist. And then words with ITY such as city, unity, quality, reality. So with these prefix and suffix, it's also a good place to practice your flourish, because now you know prefix is in the beginning of a word, so you can practice how to do your flourish going forward. And then for the suffix, you know how to end the words nicely, finishing up with some flourishing. Now we're already on to number 10, which is a trickier one among these 10. So number 10, we're going to do double letters. Double letter is usually tricky. Some example will be funny, happy, especially for happy, because there's all these 3 descenders and they all like jumbled up together. And it's a word we kind of use a lot, especially when you're writing calligraphy. You write happy anniversary, happy new year, happy birthday. So practice words like this, which is quite frequent and quite difficult. It's a really good way to improve your calligraphy. And it's like what I usually tell my calligraphy students is to practice these words like your names and then holiday names, because that's when you will probably most likely to end up writing anyway. So make these words look really nice. Then you can impress people. People will think, oh, then you can write everything nice. But actually, you're just writing 5 words really nice. So although double letters can be very tricky, but once you figure out how to flourish them or swatch them nicely and cohesively, it's really satisfying. For some letters, such as like the double R, the double C, there's a tendency for people to write it too close, especially for C, because it's like an open letter. So a lot of time they forgot that both C needs their own personal space. And the same thing with R. It's one of those odd-shaped letters, and what I find is helpful is to make them make a little variation on their size, so you're naturally spacing out more properly when they're different size. For double E's, be careful that you don't connect the first E, the exit stroke, and the entrance stroke of the E into one movement. You still want to write them as 2 separate letters. So double S is also another tricky one because like R, it's a S, it's also an odd shape and also has like an opening. So it's tempting to put them too close until you realize they're bumping to each other. So just make sure when you're writing words that has double S, make sure you leave enough space so each letter has their own personal bubble. Words such as like fuzzy, you want to make sure the spacing is evenly distributed. Another tricky double letter will be letter M. So if you do 2M, then you see this letter is very up and down straight. So if you didn't separate them as two words, then it becomes hard to distinguish between the first M and the second M. So if you just want to do everything in one stroke, it would turn off just like a zigzag instead of 2M. What I would suggest is to write one letter and then pause and then to write the second letter. Now, one last bonus tip is to copy a book. I know it sounds really crazy, but when I first started learning calligraphy, I will actually, because I normally don't come up with any brilliant quote or saying, so what I did is I would just take out my Bible and copy, Psalms. Pretty much I was like turning myself into a scribe. But you can take out a book of, poem, and then just copy it. So these are my 10 plus 1 things for how to practice calligraphy when you don't know what to write. And I have made a list of these things, so you can obviously find all of these on, go on internet, find them. But if you want, you can download this 10 list of things. Then I already list out all different, the popular names and the popular last names and the Pangrams and common words, the prefix, the suffix, and the double letters. So they're all nicely laid out for you. You can download this list of 10 things in the link below. I hope you like this video. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button and consider subscribing. I'll see you next time with more tips and tricks for calligraphy and lettering. Wait. I should just speak in Chinese.